started. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 8 of Getting to Know Your Community. I am Will. I work in Web3 as well, but today we're here to talk to PD, who's been involved in the blockchain space for I think quite a while. Welcome, PD.
Thanks for having me, Will. Cheers.
Thanks, great to have you here. So you've had quite a bit of experience, I think, in a whole number of fields. So I'm really curious about your journey into Web3, what got you here, what were the touch points, what got you super interested? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Will. So yeah, to give you a bit of context, so I'm coming from the TradFi. So I graduated back in 2008-9 years. So during the global financial crisis, so I did accounting and commercial law. That was my majors. But as you know, during the time, it wasn't that easy to get into much of accounting and finance companies. As you know, there was plenty of experienced people out there in the market, looking for even entry roles, right?
Yeah, that was the worst time to graduate, I think.
Yeah, to be honest, that was actually. So I had to probably do I think 350 some sort of application before I actually got my first job with the CBA. From there, I was in around the banking and finance for good, I would say 12 to 13 years, doing different things, going from accounting services to payments to cyber to blockchain and everything, right? The first time I actually heard about anything about Bitcoin and blockchain was back in probably 2013. So I have a good friend who is now the CTO in my Geminio the marketplace as well. He sent me a white paper of the Satoshi's Bitcoin white paper. At that time, I was riding high on my career as a TradFi world. I looked at it. I didn't understand actually much of it, to be honest. I look at Merkle trees, nonce and everything. I'm like, oh, this is a lot of technical jargons. This is like another cyberpunk kind of like a world. So I kind of dismissed it. But looking the hindsight, but at the same time, it's good in a way, because at that time, it wasn't that easy to buy cryptocurrencies as well. They were the only place I think I knew where to buy was Mt. Gox. Yep. So if I went with that, anyway, I would have lost the money. So in that regard, I'm not really too worried about it, only losing my sleep for it. But then again, back in 2017, so while I was working for the financial institution I was referring to, they did a bit of research around how the blockchain and the cryptocurrencies could disrupt the financial markets and things like that. So I don't want to get into detail into what were the projects were, because it is all private. And probably I've signed some NDAs as well. But during that process, I get to understand what actually is, rather than just reading the white paper. I had to do a multiple reading, and that time, the financial institution having multiple private partnership as well. So you got to experience about R3 quotas, XRPs, and things like that. So I see how this value is kind of created, right? So I think one of the main things when you're actually talking about the blockchain and cryptocurrencies, people ask, okay, what's the value proposition you're creating it? So what does that mean is is it making anything cost cheaper, right? Any making any faster or better, right? So those are the questions we ask among ourselves as well. How can blockchain come, So is it a fancy technology just to, get some market kind of a traction, a media geek kind of a thing, or is it actually solving problems? So that's how actually really get into deep to understand to the Bitcoin specifically, because at that time the mother of cryptocurrencies, how the block is created, what is the cryptography, doing all that stuff. So that's how I actually moved from the TradFi to the DeFi. I wouldn't call it DeFi, cryptocurrencies or the blockchain space.
Well, that's really interesting. So initially, a friend got you to look at Bitcoin, and I do have a similar story in that I think it was 2008 or 9. A friend gave me the Bitcoin white paper, and I looked at it and I went,
very early.
Yeah, very early. And I look at it and I go, what is this? This is just math. I don't understand what the hell is going on here. And it wasn't until 2017, I think, where I got my interest. But I think the part of your story that's pretty interesting is a friend gets you to look at Bitcoin. And then what happens is now it's an institution that says you really, really want to get into this and understand it. And so that's how you got into it. So did the institution see it as a threat or something that they could onboard? Like, what was their thinking? Why were they so interested in?
Well, the world is not binary, right? It's not 0-1. It's like, sometimes threat, sometimes opportunity. So people want to know when there's a new technology or new terms comes into play. More than anything, just to understand it, like, from their perspective, like, is it going to disrupt what we do, or can we use it as an opportunity, right? So that's kind of like, it was a very agnostic kind of approach to see how this technology plays out in their long-term plan.
Yeah, interesting. And then, so that was you doing it for the institution. Like, what sparked the interest for you? So you must have been doing it for the institution, and then you must have come to a point where you kind of got that aha, like I get it.
Moment.
Yeah.
No, I get it. Yeah, that's a good question, right? Because I did accounting. So Luca Pacioli, the 14th century mathematician who brought the double entry system, right? So then during this process of researching and understanding technology, I understood, okay, there's a better way than double entry system, right? Mm-hmm. There is a way that universally people can know what are these transactions are from the auditability, traceability perspective. That's great, right? Mm-hmm. But I was kind of pondering around it for a while as well. Even though I had the aha moment, I didn't see an application that I can actually get out from the institution and kind of like what I was doing to start my own thing, or to have 100% passion for. But during the DeFi summer, because I was still at the working on the back-end finance world, so the curve finance, everything started coming in. And I was gobsmacked by some of these APYs these guys are kind of creating. So I was trying to at some moments I was reading these white papers and thinking, am I dumb to not to understand this shit, or what's going on here, right? Like after all these doing things, I'm starting to come up with every different terminologies, jargons, very high tokenomics. I'm like, what's going on? Then I took a step back and I kind of thought, okay, how these are created, blah, blah, blah. So then I saw an opportunity, to give you a bit of context. I'm coming from a third world European country. So I was born in Sri Lanka, right? So I moved here to Melbourne back in early 2007 to do the university and pretty much finish the studies and go back, right? So born and raised in a country of third world European country, understanding the currency, the money supplies, economic concepts. I saw this as an opportunity to kind of a bridge some of those needs that's there currently not being fulfilled, right? So everyone has a reason they get engaged in the cryptocurrencies or the Web3 world or decentralized finance. They have their own personal journey. So that was my personal journey. So I saw there is opportunity to bridge that. As most of the people living on those countries doesn't have the opportunity to. Especially retail investors doesn't have the opportunity to participate in the global financial system because of either the currency limitations, the capital controls, or not having the knowledge, or not having access to the resource. So that's where I got myself interested. So hence I did that move. During the pandemic, I pretty much left my banking and finance role to move into the DeFi world.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. And I think it's it's us, I think, and the community in general who's really involved in startups, working in those startups, building all of these things, and it's all about composability, and it's all about. So we're all working towards one goal, and I think it's financial liberation. It's almost like so. I didn't grow up in the West either, and so. But I think we're fortunate in that our countries have fairly strong currencies. But then, look at Zimbabwe, places like that where they're experiencing runaway inflation. These people get paid in this currency that will be worth less a couple of days later. It's like in these countries, it's even hard to keep up with the price of bread. you know? So I think that the things that, I think you're right in that, like it's a great opportunity and it acts as almost like a secondary economy, almost like an exit point for people who need to, and we just need to create these tools to enable them to, access those spaces. Financial inclusion, banking, would be like so. Yeah, for example, making it easier for people to access financial services who would otherwise be unable to with the regular financial system, I think.
But saying that, Will, right? Like that's the whole libertarian side of us, like yell out inside saying, "Hey, we need the equal access to all those things." But being a realist at some time as well, like having a bit of a financial background and economic background, so I'm thinking, look, the financial literacy is something that we've been trying to give it to people since, like, I don't know, from the dawn of the concept of finance. But it is something not many people want to like learn as well. It kind of like stresses people out, so they don't have that literacy. Even we go into this DeFi world thinking like it create this opportunity, but the education has to go in hand. And looking at our previous experience in this whole side of the world, it's not that easy. Like getting someone to to have a look at the budget, understanding the tokenomics. These are all like not really simple concepts. Someone having probably invest $1,000, asking him to go through the transparency of the smart contract to understand the tokenomics, the supplies, the vesting and all that stuff is not really practical in the current format. So it is a challenge. So obviously we are in the embryonic kind of like a stage in the DeFi, and there's a long way for us to go. But we have to start from somewhere. So that's where we are. So I don't think we are in a place that we can say, hey, here the DeFi retail, come join us this whole liberation. But it's a step-by-step process. It's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of like pivots has to happen as industry as well before we get there. So that's kind of like my thought process around it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And not only that, so we're talking about people who haven't had access to crypto, but then there's a lot of people who have had heaps of access to crypto, but it's still really hard to understand the tokenomics. Case in point, Luna. There's a couple of I think fairly intelligent people, maybe including the founders themselves, who had created this whole token that just crashed in a number of days. Some of us could see it before it happened, but there's others who couldn't. And I guess you're right that there is that challenge in education. And I just wonder, like, how do you think? What do you think is the best way to create this education to give users, this is what you need to look at least when you're evaluating a token? Do you think there's an easy way or a way even?
See, that's the question. That's a $1 billion question, right? Like, if you look at from the market perspective, if you look at global equity market is probably what, $80 trillion, right? The global bonds and the debt market is around $250 trillion, and the cryptocurrency is like probably just under $1 trillion at the moment after the whole bear market going through, right? So it is like to get to there. So there has to be some sort of structures need to come into play. Like I said, we can't expect this generic retail investor who doesn't have financial background to do all this work. Because if you're expecting him to do that work, that means you are failing as a system, right? So if we are again creating this whole the predator prey dynamics in another market sets, what's the point of it, right? So we want to do it better. So during this journey, there are gonna be like events like Celsius. There are gonna be events like 3 Arrow Capital. There's gonna be like Luna Foundation. Obviously, some of the ones we actually saw this coming, like especially from looking at their tokenomics, understanding the normal economics of how the value works. So you could have seen this happening. But then again, like for example, like I think I've probably had a conversation on our Discord channel as well. Like Susu and Alex Pashensky, they are not amateurs, right? They are not people you would expect them to, like, some people obviously, even if you go to a prison and ask someone, a person who actually murdered someone, he will be able to rationalize why we did it, right? Why he did it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how the normal, the psychological side of it works. But these people are not that people. These are people who actually been, like, been running trading firms, running the entrepreneurship for a while, right? But still they were failed. But is that because of there was no consequences for them to, like, comparatively, like, it's a similar situation happened like with the Do Kwon. Would he be like, able to walk freely and start another Luna 2.0, right? Well, this whole, if you look at from the banking financial side of it, which I'm coming from, there's legislation, bear legislation, things like that, which is keep the management accountable for some of the decisions, and could even end up going to the jail, right? So did they took these high leverages, understanding the contagion risk, like, was they really didn't thought this through, or because they knew that there was no consequences, right?
Yeah.
So all of these, like, the questions that we have to answer ourselves. Again, this is a giant experiment, like, so if we should never, like, kind of like, promote ourselves, so anything we do as, like, saying, hey, it's a risk-free kind of like an investment scheme. This is an asset class which is growing and progressing, so you have to take it that value. So you have to be careful, like, what you can put it. So if you can't afford to, like, lose what you're putting in, then definitely you should be playing in this space, because
I think that's
there's so many whales and sharks.
Yeah, I think that's the number one rule. What do you think about investment DAOs? So I've seen a few DAOs out there that do their research, and then of course you can caveat that by saying that you have to trust a group of people. I think they do vote. I think they do vote on what they want to allocate next to their treasury. Like, what do you think about that in terms of making it an easier way for users who are interested in holding onto crypto, for interest, for a little bit of investment, for a little bit of exiting, sovereign currencies? What do you think about investment DAOs as a start towards that process?
Yeah, before I say that, I have to say none of these, conversation is the financial advice. This is just for the educational way.
We have to agree that this is definitely not financial advice.
Because I don't want to be caught up in this.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's ultimately my personal opinion. Only, like, this doesn't even represent, like, why I work or anything like that. So look, idea is good, right? But the problem is, in the finance, like, 101 is like the personal circumstances. That's why you actually, hire these financial advisors or anything as such, right? So your financial circumstances were very different to mine, right? I have two kids, like, I have a young family, this is how much I take, this is my expenses. So are they, like, really considering all these things? Probably not, right? This is going to be, from what I'm hearing and what it sounds like, it's like a managed fund, right? So, in a TradFi world, right, the people collectively, like, inputted money, and some people on behalf of these people investing it, right?
Yeah.
So there is, like, these kind of, like, financial securities, finance system exist in the TradFi world, right? So similar things is currently, like, doing through these investment DAOs and stuff, like, so even, like, back in 2017, the whole DAO hack with Ethereum. So that's that, right?
Yeah, that was a terrible. That was that forced Ethereum to fork, right? And I guess and then there was Ethereum Classic and Ethereum,
which is today, right? 2.0, whatever you call it, right? So it's what created. So look, I think it's ideology wise, it makes sense, but I think people have to consider their personal situations, because even at a DAO stage, like, I mean, I'm not like, I don't want to be claim expertise into DAO, like, structures and stuff. Like, if you speak to someone, like, in our Discord community, like, Elise will have a bit more thought through, kind of like a process to it. But in where I stand, it's a powerful concept. Like, even if you look at from the Constitution DAO, right? 40 million people coming together, obviously it didn't the way, as they were intended. But it's a collective, kind of like, people coming together, like the power of people, right? So if you look at, from the Wall Street bets to everything like that, right? So that shows something. There's energy to it. There's a collective, like, an effort to it. But how do you like manage it? Like, especially like, people like you and me, like, we have jobs to do like day to day, we have families to, are we actively, can I be actively involved in a decision-making process, right? What is my incentives? These are like, not simple questions, because, there's game theories attached to it, there's tokenomics attached to it, there's psychological attached to it. So if one day someone can come to like, to find a good solution, great. But it's again, like, these are all new concept, right? So new concept, trying it out, there's definitely probability, like, things go wrong, there's things go right. But as long as, people doing with that kind of a, like, guarded launches, guarded, like, approaches, I think it's very healthy to have these kind of like conversation, because that's how the as a human race we evolve, right? To taking like, taking risk, which is kind of calculated.
Yeah, and I think I love the word that you use, evolve, and it's almost like the blockchain is what the blockchain is. It's created this insane incentive mechanism for all sorts of people to come together and then just try things. And a lot of those things do end up failing. A lot of them do. A lot of them are still strong and steady. Bitcoin has been there without any drama outside of maybe just transaction speeds or whatever, and it's improving. But then, like you said, it's all about like evolution, and things are changing really quickly. Yeah, I guess one question I do have for you is that we were talking about DAOs, and so I think one question I'd really like to know from you is, what does community mean to you? Why are you in the Aus DeFi Association? What brought you there? What does it mean to you? What do you hope to contribute to it? Where do you think we could go with this?
Okay, I mean, if it's people who actually see, I'm always in the general category, always saying something or the other. So I'm always involved, right? Because community matters a lot, because during probably since 2017, 18, I was trying to find a set of like, community or like-minded individuals to talk about some of the things, because it is not like, something you can talk at the dinner table with your, family, because, they're talking about NFTs, DAOs and things like that. It's very foreign concept, like, then suddenly they will put you into that bracket of geeks and, move across kind of thing, right? Especially when you go too details onto it. But then again, the communities can be very influential as well, in a way, good and bad ways. Like, in that my journey to like Aus DeFi, I've been in groups where there's a lot of maximalists in different chains, right? So they believe Ethereum is the world computer, and this is where it's going to solve it. Whereas the Bitcoin and different kind of things. So suddenly it's turned some of the conversation I was in, like Telegrams, Discords, and Twitter spaces. They're becoming a little bit more like a cult-like behavior. So they didn't want to like hear anything outside what they were believing in. So and that those are the points, I had to like, move on to like another point. With those DeFi, I see people having different thoughts, different arguments, different belief system all the time, right? But I don't see people trying to like, kind of like bottle it down to anyone, or, they accept some of the things. So that whole independent thinking, critical thinking component is there, right? So I think if I have like, some sort of advice to give, like, someone who's like, 20, when I started as a career, like a point, I would say the critical thinking is probably the biggest thing you need to have, like, as an individual, as a maturing individual, because we live in a world which is narrative driven, like, people, say stuff and then we believe it, just, blah, blah, blah. So someone has to like, stop and question those ideas and say, hey, why did you say that? Like, not into like, confront them, but to understand his viewpoint of it. So I think that's something I've seen in the Aus DeFi world. There's a great community there. There's leaders, there's followers, there's like, contributors, there's listeners, everything, right? So my thinking in the Aus DeFi place, the community is to be active and like, to listen to the people's ideas, because there is, collectively we know a lot of things, individually we know to some extent. So to enhance myself with other people's ideas and also contribute them with the knowledge that I've acquired over the years, so they wouldn't do that same mistake, so they can take some of those knowledge and take those into the next level.
Fantastic. I do love what you said about critical thinking and the Aus DeFi Association being a place where there's a lot of intelligent people, a lot of leaders, a lot of followers, a lot of contributors, and then it's just a mix of different voices, and they're all there to listen, which is amazing. So PD, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. This was like really interesting. There's a lot of really cool conversations in there. I feel like the time flew just really quickly. But the good thing is that I think we will be seeing you again, but this time it's in the projects only chat, and I think we'll be learning more about something really interesting that you're working on. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. And thank you for joining us, Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me, and look forward to listening and hearing these conversations in the future. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks. Thanks, Will.